Hey everybody, I wanted to dash off a quick video on something that I think gives a lot of job seekers problems, which is, it's natural when you're ramping up and you're seeking new opportunities to place the bulk of your energy on the search, right? You want to get that pipeline developed, you want to get those interviews on the books. But once you have the interview, once it's set, what happens is a lot of people, they drop their guard at that point. And especially when it comes to the hiring manager, who is, let's face it, the person who's ultimately going to be making the decision. You may have gotten brought in by a recruiter, someone else in HR, but the hiring manager, who is usually going to be your supervisor, someone with real stakes in the game in terms of who they hire, he or she is the one who's going to make the ultimate decision. So he or she is the person that you need to impress and also work around or work with as you go through the hiring process. This trips up a lot of people because I really think that there's a lack of understanding of just kind of what their parameters are and how involved they are in this process. So I want to shoot off just 3 things that every single job seeker should know about hiring managers. A lot of it kind of goes against the grain and really blows up some typical myths about it. So if I can do that, I'm a bit of a rebellious guy. I'm always looking to give people an edge here and kind of, pull the wool from their eyes. So here we go. Number 1, in terms of things that hiring managers don't want you to know about. Number 1, you cannot confide in them. Okay? This person who you're going to be dealing with, they can be the friendliest, most gregarious person. They can encourage you to open up and give them the real deal in terms of what's going on in your career, but you can't fall for that. All right, because it's not just the fact that they're here to look for the best candidate for the job. That's one part of it. But the other part is they're also looking to actively mitigate risk. So when you start talking about workplace conflicts or failures or things that really didn't work out, no matter what they tell you in the moment, in their minds, ding, that's a negative mark on you. And believe me, people lose out on jobs just for that all the time. So how do you deal with that? Basically, step 1 is understanding the fact that in a job search, in an interview, when you're in that face-to-face, it is a structured conversation. This is not confession time for you. This is not get real time. This is you managing everything that comes out of your mouth to make yourself look better and make yourself seem like the ideal candidate for the job. So if they ask you a question, and I hate these questions, but you're probably going to be asked them. If they're going to ask you a question like, what's a failure that you've had? Or what's a weakness? The way to answer that is to think not in terms of failure or weakness, but learning experience. So in my previous job, in my previous career track, I was really great at the team leadership side of things, really good at executing in terms of that side, but the technicals is something that I was always weak at. It was never something that I had to do. It was never part of my job description, but I couldn't hold my own in terms of handling that. And a lot of times projects that should have just flown really took way longer to get off the ground because of that lack of knowledge. So for the past 2 years, I've aggressively been pursuing education, courses, training to bolster up that area because I don't want that to be a negative moving forward. The interesting thing was that in addressing this former negative, now I've got this entirely new skill set and I do see the work that I do in a different way. Boom, negative to positive, negative to a strength. That's the only way that you should be broaching negative things. And when it comes to workplace conflicts and why you got laid off, just skip all of that, all right? There's no need for them to know that, at all. A couple of other tips on this side of not confiding. We have been seeing and hearing about how people, when they, are asked about their interests outside of work, if they spend a lot of time talking about their family, and by the way, this is coming from the father of 2 kids, we're noticing that when people talk about family a lot, it is not unheard of for the hiring manager ultimately to say or make a decision, you know what? I think this person is going to constantly be pulled in 2 directions in terms of their family and their work. Are they going to be able to make this work a real priority for them? So sometimes people will miss out on that. So my tip to you is keep mentioning family stuff to a bit of a minimum. Downplay it. And this other part for women, if you're pregnant, you've probably heard this. I'm going to just reiterate this. Do not mention it during the hiring process at all. That is not something they need to know, and you don't want to open up that can of worms. Save it until you actually landed the job. So tip number one: do not confide in hiring managers. That is not their job, and that should not be what you play into. Secret number two: they are going to be checking more than your references. Not always, but if you think that just giving, a hiring manager that sheet of paper with 3 or 4 carefully vetted references, which you're going to be doing, if you think that that's where the game ends, you are wrong. In fact, the more senior of a role you're going to be looking for, the more aggressively they're going to be digging into your background. That means it's not off the table for them to reach out to people at your company that you didn't list as a reference, or to reach out to HR people or recruiters that are not listed as a reference, but that they share a connection with. They're going to be digging. They want to make sure that they're investing in you prior to making an offer is the right investment. So it's not uncommon for them to do that. So with that in mind, what can you do? Well, number one, if you know that you've got some really at-risk relationships at your previous employer or otherwise, and that these are people who realistically might get contacted during this kind of vetting process, be the bigger person, all right? Take a second, and it doesn't have to be this huge heart-to-heart, but you can just shoot an email out, or give them the call if that's what it takes, and just try to repair it and try to get it from the negative column at least into the neutral column, if not the positive. So that is definitely something you could do. The other thing too, hiring managers and employers in general, at last surveys that came out, well over 60% of employers do a deep dive on social media, not just on LinkedIn, but in your personal accounts to see if there's anything compromising. If you've got political posts, religious posts, anything that's remotely inflammatory, now is the time for you to open up all of your social media accounts, delete all of that stuff. And then the second part, that's the defense part of social media. The positive offense part is blog posts on thought leadership, connecting with key industry figures, contributing and commenting on major industry articles. You could find that on LinkedIn Pulse, for example. And it basically setting yourself up as an authority. That's going to, again, mitigate some of this fallout and make sure that what they see during that initial dive are things that you want them to see. About.me, you can also, in less than an hour, create an About.me. It's like a one-page business site that, again, just controls your brand. And if you don't have much of an online media presence, just taking the time to create that will help that to be one of the major things that they see, in addition to, of course, your LinkedIn profile, which you should have, and a few other of these entities. So repairing at-risk relationships, understand the fact that they are not going to just usually restrict themselves to only your references. And number 3, playing a strong offense and defense game on social media. These are crucial, and these are really gonna help. So finally, number 3, the first offer that you get, and congratulations if you're at that point where you're getting the offer, but understand the first offer that you get, no matter what they say, all right? It doesn't matter if they come into you and they say, look, this is standard for the industry. This is standard for what we offer, what we pay people at your level. This is standard for whatever they come up with. Understand the first offer is never the best, and padding is always, always, always built in. So that might not necessarily mean that you can come back to them, and I certainly 100% believe this. The first time you come in with a counteroffer should be about the salary, because that's the meat and potatoes, right? I mean, that's what you're in it for in large extent. You want to make sure that you get those dollars up in terms of that. But say you've done that, you've come back, and they're firm on that salary. Don't stop there, okay? That's a huge mistake people make. If salary is off the table, a one-time cash payout, sign-on bonus, whatever you want to call it, hiring managers are oftentimes way more open to that than a salary increase, because number 1, it doesn't show up as a salary, so it's not a recurring thing. And if they're at the point where they believe that you're the right person for the job, they want you, that is something that a lot of companies are going to be very, very open to. So if you can't negotiate a higher salary, go right into getting that sign-on bonus, getting that extra payout, that one-time payout. Relocation packages, negotiate that. Make sure that that is on the table. If there's anything remotely considered a relocation for this position, you need to negotiate that and make sure that your bank account gets rewarded for the time and the trouble that you're going to be taking to set yourself up for this role. So that's another thing. And then finally, again, I'm not going to call this a long shot, but this is something people negotiate a lot. If you're getting a position that is within your existing industry, but with a different company, a lot of times we will see that you can use your previous employer compensation package as a fallback position, so that you can say, look, this is really great, but this needs to be an upward move for me. And so I'm going to need for us to talk about some of these existing benefits and perks and things that I have, because I would like to make sure that those carry over into my next position. So you're not adversarially going in there and saying, hey, this is what I'm getting there. You're not coming up to it. You're just trying to, in an open way, just make it clear that, of course, every position that you take has to move forward or at least be at a certain level. And this is the level that's been established. So can we continue the conversation on that front? So just to reiterate, the 3 secrets hiring managers definitely do not want you to know about. Number 1, you cannot confide in them. All right. They're not your priest. They are there to do a job, and they're there to vet you. So treat them accordingly. Number 2, they're probably going to be checking more than referrals. So be prepared for that. Repair at-risk relationships and play a strong game on your social media, LinkedIn and otherwise. And number 3, first offer is never, ever, ever the best one. They are expecting negotiation. So go into it understanding that. So I hope that this has been a big help to you. I hope that this lends some clarity and hopefully is going to give you a little bit more oomph and leverage as you kind of go in there. Thanks very much for following me, learning with me, and checking these videos out. It really does make my day. And by all means, visit my site, upgradeyourjob.com, where you can join my private mailing list and you'll get instant access to my 6-point checklist for landing a 6-figure job. Definitely stuff in there that you have not come across before. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.